funny.
Paralyzed with fear.
That's hilarious.
Anyway, so
back to when I was scared, right?
Right.
I love this stuff, man. We went on a completely different track for.
Well, it's related,
but it totally is. But I appreciate this kind of thing because this is the way I normally have conversations with people. You know, we can go on tangents that are loosely connected in some way for another half hour to an hour, and then come back.
I think
to
that's
that original
pretty much
topic.
the premise of
this show. Yeah,
show
well, it's probably why you got me in here to do it with you.
Yeah.
Well staffed, sir.
I can, I know good radio talent when I see it.
Oh, I thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a face for it.
You have the face for radio talent. All right, so yeah, you've had to have been, and you've told me about a couple of times.
I've had scenarios like that, yeah, where rockets were coming in, and I'm watching explosions happen not 100 to 200 feet away from me, you know, pretty darn close. But even those, I don't think I was as scared as I was when I was about 11, maybe, and I was going sledding. So we lived across the river from here when I was growing up, near the Germantown Hills area, right? And this house we had at the time, it had a sloping backyard. Like you had a big play area, big play area. That's what I thought of it as. Big open backyard, fairly level, and then about 50 to 75 feet away from the house, it starts to slope downhill.
Hence Germantown Hills.
Exactly. So it follows, right? It starts sloping downhill, and there's woods and everything back there. My dad, who was like one of the most industrious people I've ever met. I mean, that guy, if he had been hit by a car or something the previous day, the next day he'd be trying to be outside, like doing yard work or something.
Right.
I mean, he's like his mom in that way. My grandma too. Then neither one of them wanted to ever sit down. My grandfather. It's just the whole attitude he got from that family. You know, German immigrant ancestor going a couple generations back, just constantly industrious, trying to work. Somehow I missed that. I'm kind of.
I was going to say, what would your father say if he was standing here right now? He'd be like,
"What are you doing?
This is all you guys fucking do. This is it." And then he'd swear at us in German and then walk out.
Well, not my dad wouldn't, but maybe my great grandpa Nanky would.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're getting names like that, Nanky, back in the day, and I respect that. That's a good, strong German name. So at any rate, see, I'm already derailing from where I was at, but it's relevant. It's interesting. Anyway, to me. So we're at this place. My dad, the industrious guy that I mentioned before, he's so industrious. He actually cleared some of that growth and brush that was back there to a point where, like, because there's a tree line going and everything back there, he lowered some of that tree line level so that we had a view that went all the way down to the McCluggage Bridge, all the way down to Route 24. We could see that. It's like 6 miles away.
Nice.
We had this huge, awesome view back there. But big downhill drop, about 75 feet away from the house on a good slant. And he kind of tiered that a little bit over time and built some garden stuff up down there and things like that. And that was a lot of fun. But he left some of it still sloped. And there was a path that he was able to clear between some of the brush and growth so that we could have like a sled hill, right?
Sure.
I'm taking this sled hill in one winter, and I'm going down it. I get all the way to the end, and I didn't realize that at the very end, there's a really sharp drop-off of about 10 or 11 feet, right? And it drops almost straight down. There's a little bit of a curve at the end, that brings you down to another road, another street where some of the rest of the houses were. It was actually our same street. It just curved around, came downhill, and some of the houses at the end of the street were down near that way. But, yeah, from where that stopped, I don't know why I clapped for that, where that end of that sled run was at, there was a little bit of a stretch where it leveled out, but not enough for me to really slow my momentum enough.
Right.
And I was literally teetering on the edge, and I was like starting to go over the edge, and enough where I was having trouble pulling myself back up, right? And I thought, if I fall, I'm going to get seriously hurt. Or worse, right? I really believed that was the case. And I hung on for a while, about 20 minutes or so, like thinking,
wow.
like, because nobody knew I was there. This was back in the day when you could go out and play,
right?
You know,
just by yourself.
Your parents didn't need to watch you every 5 seconds,
unless the street lights were on, you were fine.
Exactly. Right. So, yeah, it's a winter afternoon. I'm doing this thing, and I'm down there by myself for about 20, 25 minutes, thinking like I'm hanging on to a tree that I've got to hold, but I didn't have the leverage to pull back up, and I was like, if I let go, like. I'm worried that I'm gonna.
This is it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I kept thinking about like, what can I do? And I was in a position where I could continue to hang in the spot that I was at, and I yelled for some help, but they couldn't hear me from where I was out at. Right. So yeah, I eventually just figured, all right, I've got to find some way where I can do this where I don't mess myself up entirely. Right. And I figured out that I could roll a little bit to one side or another, and there'd be another branch to grab, and I could kind of get it to where I came down that slope and didn't. It wasn't going to be as steep an angle, right? A little bit further to the right, I think it was, and I think there was like a pile of leaves or something that was still bundled up underneath some of the snow, so there was some sort of cushion, right? So if I did go, at least I'd have something to break my fall, but.
And a military man was born.
No, that wasn't what that was.
I just thought that survival instinct, know.
I had to figure out a way to get out of it, and it turned out that it was really just my perception of the situation. It wasn't really quite as bad a drop as I thought.
Right.
Like if I'd have just let it go, I probably wouldn't have even broken a bone. I would have been fine.
Right.
But my mind was so sure that that's what the outcome was going to be. So I was terrified.
Gotcha.
I was like, I'm screwed here. I can't get out of this situation.
And how old were you?
11, I think.
Okay, so yeah, it's a terrifying, it's a terrifying thing for a child.
Yeah,
for sure,
yeah, absolutely. That's probably one of the most scared times I've ever had that I can think of.
Missiles flying behind you, going off 100 feet away. No,
what are you gonna
no
do?
worries.
I'm kind of like the dad in the buffet. I'm like, well, we can get to a bunker, the little concrete thing, and sit underneath that and wait until the attack's over. That's pretty much all we got.
Right.
So, hey, if it hits us, I'm not gonna know. If it hits me, I might have a split second or two of awareness that it was a bad day. If it hits close to me, I might have a little more, and I might feel the burning for a little while. That would suck.
Well, that's what that's the part. Like I've always had this fear of flying, and we've talked about how I've had to overcome that. But whenever I've talked to my friends about it, they'd be like, "So what, dude? If the plane goes down, it's over. Like, it's not going to hurt or anything." I was like, "I don't care about the crash. It's not the crash or the impact. I know it's going to be quick.
Right.
It's that, 30,000 foot, that gives you quite a bit of time to really freak out before. I mean,
yeah.
Most people when they are allegedly, some doctors would argue that you're going to have a heart attack by the time you actually impact the ground on a plane crash.
It's quite
because
possible.
Of the anxiety level and the fact that you're not breathing, your heart's pumping like 1,000 pumps a second. But it's always that it's not so much like you were saying, like if it hits me right on, I'm not going to feel it, but like what would suck is if it hit near me and just I melted instead of just exploded.
I think there's a reason that with the military background, I probably haven't had as much of that in theater, and I say in theater being out there in Iraq or Kuwait. In like combat situations, well, okay, not really combat situations. As people were shooting at us, I never had to shoot anybody back, so it doesn't really qualify as combat.
Thank you for your service. Shit, I mean,
it's all good, brother.
No way I would be able to do that.
My family continued to eat, so that was my motivation.
I'm just a scared little bitch when it comes to ballistic missiles.
Well, what they do in basic training, right, is give you various different activities to do, different skills that they train you in. And they come with a certain level of stress, not to mention the stress that the drill sergeants put you under every day. So what this training is doing is giving you a buildup of stress inoculation. Right? That's essentially what I think it's called. You're going through different training situations that put you under stress and test your ability to still to still react effectively in the face of stress. So the more and more you do that kind of thing, and police officers, other first responders are given similar types of training now.
Right.
You go through this so that when you face real life stresses, you're going to be able to say, okay, I've had the training programmed up into my brain here, into the midbrain area, the instinct, the specific training stuff. It's programmed in here because when you get into a training situation, apparently, or a stressful situation, your body reaches a certain physical stress response. It's going to cut off blood flow somewhat to the prefrontal cortex, which is like your higher reasoning section of the brain. So you're relying on your midbrain stuff largely. Whatever you've programmed in, whatever reflexes are there, all that instinctual stuff comes from that area, as I understand it. So if you've prepped yourself not only to have good instincts and good training in the midbrain area, but you're also able to intentionally reduce your physical stress response and bring your level down, like through breathing, through, focus, things that you choose to focus on. It allows you to get back to where you can use your higher reasoning functions in those situations and be more effective, right? We had this whole briefing on this back in like 2009. We had a guy named, he was a retired Lieutenant Colonel, David Grossman, and he wrote a couple of different books on this kind of thing, on killing and on combat, where these really, really like scholarly works. I mean, this guy's like a PhD, in this kind of stuff. And he goes around and has developed these different training criteria, basically, that you put first responder groups through, primarily like cops and military, so that when they're in the battlefield situation, they know how to prep themselves well so they can be the most effective in that deal, right?
Okay.
So yeah, that's a long-winded explanation of that whole thing.
No, that makes sense. I mean, that's what, every movie I've seen about, like camp, the basic training and stuff is how to break you down and then build you back up the way that they need you to be. And everybody has a different spot in that in that quilt, if you will. Yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. That's why I probably wouldn't even make it through basic. They'd be like, "You made your bed wrong," and I'd be like, "I'm sorry." Like I could do it.
We could help you, right? We could do things together on this show for the viewers to watch you become somebody who would not lean toward the private pile outcome, right? You will not be Vincent D'Onofrio in Full Metal Jacket.
I enjoy being the overly sensitive guy because like I'm passing that on to my kids, and I think if anything we need more sensitivity in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's a misconception.
But
you don't have to lose it to develop stress inoculation.
But I think a lot of people that are military, or at least the way that military is perceived or portrayed, is you can't be emotionally involved. You can't. You have to eliminate the emotion in it.
I think that's what you see of it, and that's what I'm saying. It's like I think it's a misconception about it, especially in like film and TV and stuff. Well, it's not really quite like that. You're still emotionally involved, but but you learn how to control it. That's all it is.
At the same time, like in a situation where that's why women weren't really allowed, at least the way that I understand it. I'm talking to some in combat is because it could take that split second where it could affect your judgment because it is a woman, especially if you're going up against a woman. Like if you're in a combat situation and you see a woman walking towards you, you might have a little bit more hesitation because it is a woman. But
there is some scientific research that's been done in the past that would suggest, yes, we have seen statistically significant amounts of that type of response in people, in men,
of course, in children, it would be even more.
Yeah. Well, and as I understand it, in Vietnam, and even in Iraq, we had times during the OIF thing where kids would be sent with grenades or with other kind of stuff to troops, to mess up their day.
Right.
That's been a tactic that's been used by people.
And the whole reason that they do that is because
it's a psychological tool, right? And people know that because it has worked. Mm-hmm. But again, if you prepare yourself for those things, I'm not saying you're always going to be like on your game with that. I know I'm not for sure. Like a couple of years ago, our oldest dog, Gerby. She's like this Heinz 57, combination of all kinds of stuff.